Hello, I'm John Janarone, Editor-in-Chief of Tech Edge. Thrilled to be back here at Nasdaq MarketSite, this time upstairs in Studio B. I've got with me here today Vishal Saxena, who's Chief Technology Officer at Octus. Vishal, wonderful to have you here.
Thank you, John. Thank you for having me here.
So before we dig into the nitty-gritty, can we talk high-level, big-picture stuff? What is the role of AI in financial services as it should be played?
Yeah, let's talk about the AI philosophy. There's a lot of buzz about AI. In my opinion, AI is as good as the underlying data behind the AI. That's actually good for us because at Octus, we have the best data in the market, right? We have the best data on the credit intelligence in the entire market. So that's good, but we also have to serve enterprise clients across the entire financial services. You got your investment banks, you got buy side, you got the law firms, you got the advisors, and when you're serving AI technologies to the enterprise client, you have to have a very different view on AI. You have to think about how you're deploying AI at the enterprise scale. And to me, the most important thing about that is, what is your data strategy, John, right? Because if you are not thinking through about your data, for example, your static data, you got your bonds, you got your loans, you got your issuers, securities, instruments. If you're not going to centralize those, you're going to have a fragmented data set. And when you have fragmented data set, you're going to have a fragmented AI experience, right? That's not good for the customers. Similarly, if you are ingesting data from your vendors, how are you centralizing that? How you're securing the data in a way that's consistent and reliable for your customers? How are you storing data? Do you need a data warehouse? How are your engineers accessing the data from the data warehouse in a way that's consistent, right? So you really have to think through these things. And most importantly, AI is on top of these different data sets, and not all data sets are equal.
Right.
You got private data sets, you got public data set, you got proprietary data set. Different data sets have different functional requirement, different security requirement, different compliance requirements. So you really have to think through all these aspects before you can really deploy AI at scale. And at Octus, I think we've been thinking about these things from the very beginning. Now, the fun fact is that everything that I've talked about so far, you can say that it applies to software as well. Right? So the way I see is AI is basically part of your software stack, right? So if you get the software right, and you think about all those things that are required to get software right, and you apply that to AI, you're going to have a very solid AI strategy. So that's how I think about AI as a whole.
That's a really good explanation, Vishal. Can I just, for the layman, so everybody in the world now knows about ChatGPT, right? So just to make that distinction, when you're looking at open AI like that, the data is all kinds of stuff, right? But your approach, I know this is oversimplified perhaps, but I want to explain this to our viewers. You're not looking at everything. You're looking at very specific trusted data sets, correct?
That's true, John. I think we are very purpose-built, very credit domain specific. That's the use case. Those are the customers. That's where we cater to. So the AI technology that specifically credit AI that we have is very specific to the credit market and credit industry.
It makes a lot of sense. So now, again, just getting back to the AI folks, Sam and Elon that everybody knows about. You've been in this business a lot longer than, well, not than they have, but you've been in a lot longer than AI as we know it has become so popular in the news. Tell me how it's evolved from your perspective.
So, well, John, first of all, I have to say this, that AI at Octus is not something new.
Right.
Our data science team have been building models for years before ChatGPT was a thing.
Well, yeah,
right?
That's what I meant.
Now, obviously, as you build all these models, right, you have to be able to integrate those models with your software stack, with your platform, because at the end of the day, it's all about delivering value end-to-end to the customers, right? So the way it evolved at Octus is we took a two-pronged approach to solve this problem of how do you deploy models in a very integrated and scalable way, right? So first part is the people, right? You got to have the right skill set, and that's not just about building models. It's also about your AI engineers. It's about your full-stack engineers, your front-end engineers, your back-end engineers, ML ops. And we basically created an AI innovation team at Octus that brought a skill set from all these type of folks in a single team with a purpose on delivering an end-to-end AI solution.
Gotcha.
Right? And then you have to also think about your compliance and security angles, because you're dealing with a lot of sensitive data, right? And you have to really make sure that you have the right guardrails and controls and the governance. So we also brought our IT security team and our compliance team as part of the team. So that's on the people side. That's from a people capability perspective. But then you also need an architecture to be able to embed AI more broadly. And that's where we took approach like we basically built a master data management to centralize all of our issuers and securities We brought data warehouse. We basically brought Snowflake. We created a data API that our engineers can use to pull data out of database in a consistent way. And when you bring all these data strategy and the people capability that I talked about it, that's how we delivered Credit AI in 2023.
Yeah.
And it's actually, it has been a very great product, because now our customers can use natural language queries to interact with Credit AI in ways that they could not have done before, right? And we're talking about hundreds of thousands of documents, John.
Yeah.
Over like many years, right? Over 10,000 companies coverage available at your fingertip just by you asking a simple question. And it's not just question and answer. It's like, as you ask a question and get an answer, you can actually audit that response all the way back to the document from which the question is coming.
Yeah.
So you have the traceability, because one of the challenges with AI is that sometimes you get all these answers, you have no idea where the answer is coming from, right? So you need to have that visibility into the source of the documents, and Create AI provides you that as well. Other than that, I think the other fun fact about Create AI is that when you interact with it, not only it answers your question, it also suggests other questions that are really in the scope of a conversation. So next thing you know is you're engaged with the application, and next thing you know is within minutes you have full view on a case that you are maybe analyzing it. And yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. If I'm understanding you right, your clients cannot risk getting hallucinations, right? So you're taking deliberate steps to prevent that happening, correct?
Yeah, there's a whole angle around like how do you validate response, how do you test it, and how do you maintain the accuracy. So there's a whole science behind it that we have to deploy as well.
I've got to ask you, my guess is that your clients are in some of the most highly regulated industries in the entire world. So your company's got a big challenge in front of it. I mean, how do you deal with that?
I think it's a challenge, but I think it's a solvable challenge. And the way we have solved it is that there are two pieces to it, right? As AI is evolving every day, you can see almost every week there's a new model out there. Every model is evolving, right? So the first thing that you have to solve is how do you abstract yourself from these ever evolving models? So the abstraction of the AI is very important, right? For example, when we built Credit AI, we first basically used OpenAI API to convert our responses into a human-readable language, right?
Yeah.
And as we kind of took that AI journey, eventually we saw AWS Bedrock came out with a lot more powerful capability, and Anthropic launched Claude. So then we were able to migrate from OpenAI to Claude over AWS Bedrock. And that's very important to us, because as the AI is evolving, as the models are evolving, we don't have to worry about what is happening behind the scene, because we can swap those models in and out. That's number one. The number two is the data itself, right? As you know, the data that we have is like the best of the best, right? Proprietary data set that only we have in the market. We don't want the data to leave our boundaries and go to the internet, right?
Right.
We don't want our data to train public models. We also don't want unverified data from internet feeding to our models, right? So one of the biggest things that you have to solve is basically how do you guard your data set in your own boundaries. And that's why we implemented a vector search with Pinecone. And the way we implement it is basically that all the data that we have is within our boundaries. Eventually we moved to AWS Bedrock OpenSearch, but again, the main thing there is that you have to keep the data within the boundaries of your ecosystem. Otherwise, you will have other challenges that you'll have to manage.
Let's get a little more specific and talk about Credit AI. I understand there have been some changes recently. Tell us about those.
Yeah, so first of all, since we launched Credit AI, there has been a lot of minor and major versions, right? I talked about the visibility into the responses. I talked about the whole concept of like application suggesting response back to you, as well as the following questions, so that you can have a follow-up back and forth. But the thing that I'm most excited about Credit AI that we recently launched last year is basically bringing the private documents and the proprietary data together. And the reason we did that, John, is because as we saw customer loving Credit AI, we are like, how do we solve this for the people who have private documents in our platform, right? Because first when we launched it, it was limited to the proprietary data set that we have, right? Yeah. So we basically decided to build a permission system in a way where we can allow you to interact with the document that only you have access. And if you have access to the proprietary data set, now at the same time you can interact with both proprietary data set as well as public data, or as well as private data set that only you have access at the same time in a unified offering. And that's something that nobody else has in the market, and that's something that we have been very excited about it.
All right, last question, if we can spin it forward a little bit, make some predictions for me. What kinds of changes are on the way? Is it the next generation of AI, other technological advancements that will impact the way financial institutions analyze data?
Well, that's a very, very good question, John. I think my view is that, especially in financial services, technology is a commodity, right? There's a lot of technology coming in every single day, right? We can spend hours and hours talking about all sort of emerging technologies, but at the end of the day, we have to serve our customers, and we have to look at from the customer use case perspective, like what makes sense for that use case. So there is no like silver bullet answer for that. I get this question all the time, which is basically like, do you want to like create AI as an LLM?
Yeah.
Right? Technologically, we can do that, but that's not something that it will give us a competitive advantage because there's so many LLM out there today, and it's a very crowded market. So there's no point us competing there in that market, right?
Makes sense.
Even for our customer, that's not a demand that we have seen. So that's an example where you can certainly build technology or leverage an emerging technology, but at the end of the day, you have to serve your customers, and we generally focus on what our customers want the most. So I understand I'm not really giving you a direct answer here, but it totally depends on the use case you're solving.
No, that completely makes sense. Well, we're going to wrap it up there, Vishal. This has been fantastic. I'm John Janarone, Editor-in-Chief of TechEdge, signing off from Nasdaq MarketSite.